All right, welcome to part 8 of the Great Depression and the New Deal. Now we're going to talk about alphabet soup, the New Deal programs. Now, as we look at the New Deal programs, it creates what we call an alphabet soup of different little organizations, like the WPA and the CCC and the TVA. These are some of the ones we'll talk about. I'm not going to talk about all of them, right? But when we look at New Deal programs, we can break them into 3 major categories, 3 R's. The first category is relief. Relief is any New Deal program that tries to create any kind of immediate relief for individuals, that be it jobs programs or what have you, right? The second category is recovery, and this is any program that's designed to try and get us out of the Great Depression, right? Any of these programs that decide to reverse the Great Depression and get us back into a stable economy. And the final one is reform, and this is any program which is designed to prevent another depression from ever happening again. And all these New Deal programs fall into one of these, and sometimes there's some crossover, but they fall into one of these categories. So let's look at a few of them. Like the National Recovery Act. The National Recovery Act was designed to help regulate industry, right? Matter of fact, it's going to create regulations for over 5,000 different industries. It's going to generate 30,000 pages of regulations, calling on all kinds of different things: minimum wages, maximum hours, guaranteed overtime, the right to organize, unionize, and collectively bargain, right? Just page after page after page of regulations. And if your company fell within all the guidelines of the regulations that apply to your industry, you would be given a plaque like the one you see here. NRA member, we do our part. You could put that on your factory fence or your storefront window, and that of course shows your consumer, your customer, your employee, hey, we're one of the good guys, right? We're doing our part. We're doing what we can. Now, unfortunately, the NRA is one of the programs that will be struck down by the Supreme Court, but we'll talk about that later. Another program we had was the Agricultural Adjustment Act. Remember, the farmers were hit first. The Depression for them began really, really early. They needed help. But the first thing Roosevelt decided he needed to do was he had to do something about the fact that there was so much agricultural goods on the market. He says we need to reduce that inventory so that prices will go up, and that's what will help the farmer. So the Agricultural Adjustment Act begins to pay farmers not to farm. Pays them to plow up their crops or kill off X amount of their pigs or their cows, right? Reduce their herd sizes. All these different things. Now, this was a great program for the landowners, the farmers themselves, right? Because they were being paid not to farm. This was not so good if you were a tenant farmer. If you were a tenant farmer, you found yourself suddenly unemployed, right? As the landowner came and said, the government is paying me not to farm this land, well, okay, now I don't need you, you're out of work. 400,000 tenant farmers would immediately find themselves without a job, right? And if you're an African-American tenant farmer in the South, remember, there's still Jim Crow laws on the books. You might also be arrested for vagrancy at the same time, okay? The tenant farmers did collectively organize to try and do something about this. Matter of fact, one of my favorite ones, you had the creation of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. And yes, I see the acronym, that's why I find it so humorous, which began to lobby the government to try and get some of that money for the farmers down to the tenant farmers themselves, since they're the ones that were actually not farming. By the time they get that through, though, is about the same time the Supreme Court strikes down the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and it goes away entirely. You have the Public Works Administration. This is a project that is designed to put people to work, right? Skilled laborers. They're going to be put in projects like building bridges, large buildings, even naval ships. As a matter of fact, 2 very important ships in World War II will be produced as part of the Public Works Administration. The Yorktown, which the Japanese will declare that they've sunk 3 times. They'll be right the 3rd time, right? And this ship right here, the Big E, the Enterprise. The Enterprise is the most decorated aircraft carrier of World War II. It'll be involved in every major action in the Pacific except the Battle of the Coral Sea, and that's just because it just didn't get there on time. It was on its way. All right, so the PWA is one of these projects that puts people to work in skilled labor positions. But what if you're an unskilled laborer? Well, there's a program for that too. The Civilian Conservation Corps, right? Or as often as referred to as the Tree Army. If you're between the ages of 18 and 25, single and male, you could apply to be a member of the CCC. They would come and pick you up. They would pay you $1 a day. And they would send you out. They would pay for your clothing. They would pay for your food. They'd pay for your housing. And you would be doing forestry work, planting trees in parks or out in the forest, right? Tending forests, things like that. Okay. Now, this was a great program for young men, single men, and on top of this $1 a day to help the families, you were required to send 70 cents of that dollar home to your families. So it was designed to get these men to work, but also to support their families as well. And as an ulterior motive of this, it also got these young men out of the cities, which were just breeding grounds of communist ideas and other political ideologies, right? Because remember, when times are tough, people start looking at these things. Socialism always looks a lot better when things aren't going well, right? And so this gets them away from there and out of these influences. The Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA, is going to be the largest electrification project ever conducted by the United States up to this point. Most of the rural South, even here in the 1930s, still was not electrified. All right, the TVA is going to build a series of dams and hydroelectric plants along the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers, which in turn are going to be used to electrify the South. The project is so successful that when World War II breaks out, this TVA is going to become the central location of one of the major production facilities during the Manhattan Project. That building you see in this picture is the K-25 uranium refining plant. This is where they are going to refine uranium into weapons-grade uranium, something you can use in a bomb. So you got two types of uranium, two primary types. You got 235 and 238. 238 is pretty common and not very good to use as a nuclear material for bomb making. 235 is. This facility separates the two from each other, right? Which is a pretty arduous process, requires a lot of energy and a lot of water, and the TVA provides both. So, just some more alphabet soup to kind of sum this all up, give you just a feel for all these different programs that come up, right? There's a whole bunch of them, right? For example, the Securities Exchange Commission is going to be created to help regulate the stock market, get rid of some of those unfair practices. As I mentioned before, Joseph Kennedy is going to be put in charge of that by FDR, which is ironic considering that many of the things he was doing is the things he's now going to put a stop to now as the head of the SEC. The Homeowners Loan Corporation. A lot of people are losing their houses, their farms. Why? Well, mortgages aren't like they are today. Back then, mortgages typically were 4 years. In the first 3 years, the payments were relatively small, and then on the fourth year, you had a large balloon payment. Typically, what you did is you paid those first 3 years and then got a new loan on year number 4, and you just kept doing that. Well, now all of a sudden, now you got banks that are not loaning money. What do? The government will buy your loan. Give it an extended term with a low interest rate, and you don't lose your home, or more importantly, you don't lose your farm. The Civil Works Administration, or as often was called the Rake Army. This was a unskilled job program that was so radical that even FDR felt that it smacked of socialism, and he put a stop to it. It literally was hiring people one group of people to dig a hole and another group of people to fill the hole in, right? So it only is going to last for a short period of time, because even FDR knew the Supreme Court was going to destroy this as soon as it ran across their docket. The Works Progress Administration, the WPA. This one is going to be like the PWA, it's a similar acronym, except it's going to expand not just major projects like bridges and ships, but also the arts. They're going to build stadiums. They're going to have art projects. Like, for example, if you've been to San Antonio, the River Walk down in San Antonio, that was a WPA project. If you walk through there now, you can find the plaque that signifies that this was a WPA project. If you go to Texas Women's University up there in Denton, there's that little church in the woods. All that stained glass work is a WPA project, right? Matter of fact, if you take a look at the stained glass work itself, they all depict New Deal programs. So there's all these different programs that come out of this alphabet soup that's designed to provide either relief, recovery, or reform. Not everybody's in favor of this.